My name is John Mendez, and I am your host. Welcome to Walk to Wealth, where I motivate and inspire people new to the world of personal finance by letting you all in behind the scenes of someone who's still on his way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Walk to Wealth podcast. If you're tuning in on YouTube or any of the podcast directories, make sure to do us one teeny tiny little favor. Just make sure to refer us to a friend. If you find any value in this episode or have found value in the episodes prior, the biggest thank you that you can say to us is just by referring us to a friend and trying to impact as many lives as we can for people in their walks to wealth as possible. And so the biggest thank you would be to refer us to a friend. Without further ado, get a good friend of mine, Chris. For anyone that may not know you, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, John, thanks so much for having me on, man. So I'm a full-time blogger, YouTuber, podcast host. I run a podcast called the Blogger Revolution podcast, and been doing it now for a couple of years. But mainly what I do for the most part is blogging. I'm an affiliate marketing blogger. I create content on sites out there. I get traffic from Google, which is like the best traffic in the world. And then when I get traffic from there, hopefully they either click through and buy stuff on the site or using affiliate marketing, or I make money with page views. So as people see those pages, I get a little bit of money each time. And putting all that together has gotten to the point to where I was able to make a full-time income from it. I was able to have my wife quit her job so that she can stay home with our kid. And doing that, it's been really fun. I've been enjoying that now for a while. And I guess want to sit here and talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. And so before we get into nuts and bolts of today's conversation, tell us a little bit about your walk to wealth. You kind of just touched upon it just now when you said you were able to make your wife quit her job so she could take care of the family. But where does the story all start? What were you doing before affiliate marketing and blogging and podcasting? Where does the story take place?
Yeah, so I used to work at one of the big four tax audit and consulting accounting firms. Exactly. Yeah. And I was working there for a while, and it's kind of soul sucking. I must be honest. I was like the manager in one of the offices there, and it's just a lot of time, a lot of effort when it comes to working. And what I found is that it was just taking so much time away from the family. When we found out that we were pregnant with our first son, this was back in like 2016 or so, my wife sat me down and she told me that she wanted to quit her job. And I was thinking to myself, like, man, we can't afford this. Like, it's going to be kind of nuts to just be losing $40,000, $50,000 worth of income per year right there. But then she said, no, I really want this. We want to be able to give our son mommy care rather than daycare. And I was like, all right, well, I guess we got to figure this out. So I went online and I did what most people do. I Googled how to make money online, came across a lot of garbage and a lot of time wasting stuff. But I eventually stumbled across affiliate marketing and blogging, and I started giving it a try. I didn't take it seriously at first because it was almost came across to me as like all the other things that claim to make you $1 million, right?
Yeah.
But I gave it a try, struggled with it at first. I ended up kind of liking the process and really enjoying just creating the content and putting it out there. I really enjoyed the passive nature of it as well. And slowly but surely, I was able to grow it in about 18 months to a point to where I could have my wife quit her job. And then when she quit her job, about maybe 3 to 6 months after that, I was able to quit mine. It became a waste of time to go to work at that point. If I was able to put in 8 hours working on my stuff versus making someone else rich, I decided to start working on my own thing. And it really has been working out. We decided to try it for a year. It ended up we're now at 4 years and still going strong. So that's where we are now.
And that's amazing. And if you don't mind me asking, just take it back a little bit. What kind of fears were you coming across when your wife said, hey, I want to leave my job so I can be a mom? And I'm pretty sure you were an entrepreneur at that point in time. So walk us through a little bit of what was going on in your head at that point in time?
Yeah. So I've always been a bit of a serial entrepreneur. I've always been doing something that was generating some income somewhere, doing whatever, but it was never justified. It was never enough to justify the amount of time I was probably putting into it. It was a hobby. It was like having fun. I remember I used to DJ on the side, doing like anniversary parties and things like that. I would buy and sell clothes on eBay, buy and sell computers on eBay, just trying to find something to flip and doing that. And again, I kind of failed at a lot of those things. It didn't really quite work out. And I believe a big reason for it was because I didn't have the correct motivation behind it. So I was just doing it just for a few extra bucks. When I first got started with this whole thing, the whole idea was just to make an extra $100 a month. You think about what difference I can make, because at the time, extra $100 was just going to pay the cell phone bill. And that would have been a huge burden because of how tight we were in terms of our finances at the time. But then it started paying the electricity bill. Then it started paying the mortgage, and it just kind of kept going up and up from there. So that's basically where we are. I mean, I was scared to the point because I was like, how am I gonna provide for this family and actually be there for them as well? Because I could have easily just went and gotten a second job somewhere. I was already working 12, 15 hours a day at the firm. Now I go work another 20 hours a week somewhere else, and I was going to be a stranger in my own house, and that's not really what I wanted. So I had to find something that worked from home. I wanted to find something that was easy enough to do that I just needed to just replicate the process over and over again. And I stumbled on it. It wasn't the easiest thing in the world, but I did eventually figure it out. So I was scared, but I didn't give up. I kept going with it and found something that worked for me.
Yeah, and what was the process like, trying out all these things that didn't work out? Most people, they tried something, it's like, screw the whole entrepreneurship thing. I
Yeah.
just get a job. Like, but you were able to try something, fail, try something, fail, try something, fail until something hit and you ran with it. How were you able to come all the small failures along the way to you finding the thing that actually stuck and the thing that actually you use to now pretty much live the life that you wanted and make the life that you guys designed for not only you, but for your wife and for your son as well?
Yeah. I mean, it's not easy. Most people are built to go to work. You're built to go to a job, work 8, 10, 12 hours a day, and then you're done with it. You go home and then you can finally kind of live your life or whatever. But us entrepreneurs, we're just wired differently. We are because we're grinders. And a lot of times people will say you're trading in a 40-hour a week job for an 80-hour a week job because that's usually what happens early on when you're first trying to get the entrepreneurship going. But at the end of the day, I can choose when I work now, which is so much happier for me and for the family. And then as you are doing it more and more, then you can kind of start creating systems and outsourcing things so that other people are doing it. And you're now reinvesting in the business, but you're also buying back your time. And that's the most important part of the whole process there. So it's gotten to the point to where when I was writing 2, 3 blog posts a day at one point back in 2016, 2017, I took a lot of that money that I was making, all because I still had a job at the time too. I took a lot of the money I was making and then reinvested it into people to write the articles for me. So now I might have a website that I'm working on that I might work on maybe 4 hours a month just to continue the ball rolling on it. And then that gives me extra time to go work on other things. And so about creating these systems and everything is really helpful in making sure that you have your time because it is tough. Entrepreneurship is not the easiest thing in the world, but it's definitely the most rewarding thing in the world.
Definitely. And actually, from being an entrepreneur myself, you mentioned in that answer that us entrepreneurs are wired differently, which
Yeah.
I agree definitely 100%. How could someone change that in their wiring to become more entrepreneurial? Is that something that you're born with? Is that something that you have to grab the wires and cables yourself and wire it to if you didn't have it naturally? Whatever. What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up because I thought about this a few times and it's like you have to be tired of your situation. That's the way I like to look at it. You got to be tired of what's going on in your life. And instead of just saying, man, I wish this could happen, man, I wish that could happen, start thinking, what can I do to make that happen? Right. And when you kind of make that shift, it makes it a lot easier. I thought of this a little bit of an analogy. So you might think about maybe talking to the opposite sex, or maybe, especially if you're a guy, maybe when you're growing up, you might try to shoot your shot with somebody and you
Yeah.
get shot down. You shoot your shot with somebody else, you get shot down. Do you give up and like, man, I guess I could just never gonna date ever again? No, you keep doing it. You kind of hone at it. You get better at it. And then by the time you might be 10, 12 years old, maybe you get over there macking like like you're awesome, right? And then
Yeah.
once you get to 18 years old and 20 years old, and depending on if you're a guy, it might take you to your 30 or 40 to figure it out. But you get to the point to where you know how to talk to someone and maybe get a relationship going. But it all happened because you just kept trying until you got to that point. You got tired of being in a situation or maybe accepting the status quo for whatever it happens to be. And then thinking, you know what, I need to make a change. So usually most people may not be as motivated for a change. They might get comfortable in the fact that they know that if I work 2 weeks, I'm going to get a paycheck and just leave it at that. But you're also selling yourself. You're selling, I don't want to say selling your soul, but I mean, to a certain extent, that's how I felt at the
Mhm.
time. I used to work at a bank, John, and I know I'm going on the side here, but I used to go on a bank. I used to work at a bank, and the guy who owned the bank, the CEO of the company, didn't even have a computer on his desk because he hired everybody else to do the work for him. And I was like, that's the dream right there. That's what I wanted, and that's when I started striving for it. So I think that's the real big difference there.
Yeah, no, definitely. I feel like for me personally in my life, it's like that entrepreneurial wiring wasn't there, but I had the right wires in place. They just
Okay.
weren't wired correctly because I had a
Yeah.
lot of skills that until I didn't know were transferable into entrepreneurship because I was never really focusing on money or personal finance. But until I did, and then once I did, it just clicked because the wires were in place. I just never wired it properly. So take us a
Yeah.
little bit back to have a little bit of a pivot here.
Okay.
Back when you started the your first blog, oh, walk us through that. How was that process? How did you even find the idea of affiliate marketing and blogging? Walk us through that beginning period when you embarked on this kind of journey.
Yeah, when I started with this, I didn't know it existed. I didn't know that this was a thing really until around 2015, maybe 2016 or so. And I remember going online. I think I found this guy on YouTube. His name, he was called the Lazy Stoner, right? And I was like, the Lazy Stoner, and what does he do? But he created these blogs online. He found ways to get traffic to them, and then he would send them to high paying affiliate programs where he would get the money on the back end. But because he was the lazy stoner, he had these red eyes. He was this surfer dude looking guy. And he just made it seem like it was so simple. So I was like, I think I can do that. So he put a lot of the stuff that he was doing out there on his YouTube channel. So I just went, I binged on his YouTube channel, and I was like, okay, if this can work for him, I know I can do it. And I think that's really what separated me from some other people is I looked at him and I was like, okay, this is a stoner guy making tons of money online just through a blog. Here I am, not really a stoner guy who has a corporate job. I should be able to figure this out, right? So that's what I started doing. I put together my very first website based on all the information he was showing on the site on his YouTube channel,
YouTube. Yeah.
and I put it through. And I may have done a couple of things that I probably shouldn't have done. For example, I maybe would borrow articles, quote unquote, from other websites and then put them on mine. I was completely naive. I had no idea that that wasn't the thing you're supposed to do. But I put all that together, worked like 2.5, 3 weeks on it, posted all the articles, and just sat back and crossed my arms. I was waiting for that money to start rolling in. And I waited and I waited and I waited, and not even a single person got to the site. And it got so bad to where Google sent me an email saying that we are de-indexing your website, or basically we're taking your website out of Google because you are violating this or you're violating that. So I learned like the hard way that you can't just copy some random person online who looks like they know what they're talking about. I still believe he was doing what he was doing, but he was doing it a certain way and maybe not sharing the secret sauce of what he was really doing, just trying to sell other products, grow his YouTube channel, and sell a course or something, right? So
Mhm.
he was doing all of that stuff, but eventually I didn't let that stop me. I went out and actually found someone who I did trust, purchased their course, and actually had them help mentor me to the point to where about 18 months later, at that point, I was able to have my wife quit her job.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about, you purchasing the course. I feel like when it comes to going to college, people are so quick to get $200,000 in debt. When it comes
Sheesh,
to
yeah.
a $2,000 course or a $500 course or even a $100 course or even a $50 course, people are so hesitant. What advice would you give there to people who are super quick to get in debt for school, but or spend no time, money, or effort in self development and things that would actually matter from someone that's actually successful in the area that they want to be successful in?
Yeah. My whole life changed when I realized that I could pay people to show me how to do it. And we already knew that because college kind of does the same thing, right? They're supposed to teach you something so that you can go out there and have a marketable skill so that you can go out there. But when I realized that, okay, I can actually, in looking at it as an investment versus not, I think sometimes people don't trust themselves to figure things out. So they're afraid to put down the money. Because really, when you put down the money on something, you're now back against the wall. You're holding your feet to the fire. You need to do something with that information that you're going to be getting. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you just threw your money away. I've given away stuff for free. Like I have a course where I show people how to do blogging. I've given it away to family and friends, and I've had other people who have paid money to be in those places. Who's been most successful? The people
Paid.
who paid. Yeah. There's an old saying out there. I didn't believe it at first, but I've noticed it because of firsthand experience. People who pay attention. And when you do that, and people actually put money out there, just not just to thinking that they're wasting it. Like I feel like college is a waste of time. That's just me. Now, this is somebody who went to LSU. I went to college and got a degree, but I wish I had spent that money elsewhere. Now that I know what I know about investing in houses, investing in my knowledge, investing in a mentor who can actually help me step by step when I can go to them for a specific problem and figure out what needs to be done, that's invaluable, especially when it's a skill that you're learning that's going to be able to make you money.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask because most of my audience is people that are in that either it's just starting out to senior
Yeah.
year, college age, my age essentially. So, and I know I firmly believe too that we everything that's happened has led us to where we are today.
Hmm.
And but if you could go back, or if you could speak to people who are in my shoes or in seniors or whatever, what advice would you give to them? Because I know you said you would have used your time differently had you
Hmm.
not went to college, if you knew what you knew now. What advice would you give to people that are currently in that situation where they so that they use their time better and they don't continue getting more in the hole in terms of debt and not receiving as much value?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and there's an interesting thing. So, I believe it's MIT, which is
Yeah.
the real smart school in
S
Massachusetts.
yeah.
So, MIT, what they do, you go there, it's hard to get into the school, but once you get in, if you can graduate and you got a degree from MIT, you should be set for life at that point, right?
Mhm.
But they have a one thing. If you come up with something while you're in school, they actually encourage you to drop out and figure it out because they understand the value and how you start with this thing. And if it can really blow up, then really, I mean, you don't need college at that point, right? Some of the biggest, most, billionaires in the world didn't finish college. And it's because maybe while they were there, before they got there, they figured out something in life and didn't and realized that this was more important to put my time here than to put my time there. The one thing I don't like about school in general is that they don't teach you how to be a leader. They teach you how to be a follower. And most people are going to be followers. That's just how we are. When you go online, you might be subscribed to 100 YouTube channels, a whole bunch of TikToks and everything. You're not the one creating it on the other side, right? You want to become a creator rather than just a consumer, become a leader rather than just a follower. And when you learn how to put your mindset on that other side of things, then really the world's your oyster. One of the biggest things that was very impressive upon me was when I realized that I could create my own income without another business, without someone having to pay me for my time. Everything changed because I'm like, I can create my own income. I don't need you anymore. And that's kind of where I got to the point with the entrepreneur thing. When I remember my first commission was like maybe $20. But that was the biggest $20 I had ever made in my life because I made it without having a big corporate company giving it to me in a paycheck.
Yeah. And that no, that's super powerful because it's something about being back against the wall, full commission, no
Yeah.
guarantees, that the amount of money doesn't matter. The fact that you even made anything just becomes so much more rewarding at first when you're starting off. And that's kind of been something that I experienced. I still remember when I closed my first rental deal as a real estate
Yeah.
agent. It was like, sheesh, or when I had made my first like little bit of money from, I think it was like $7 that I did from a podcast interview one time. I was like, I felt like out those $7. Oh, they took a little bit out, so like 550 or something like that, 540. It
Yeah.
felt like it was a big deal because it's like, wow, like this is could turn into something. This is could
Yeah.
be something. So tell us a little bit more. So you invested into a mentor, and you started growing. And was it like in over not really overnight? You said it took 18 months, but
About, yeah.
from that mentoring situation, what advice did you learn there that applied to not only your entrepreneurship advice, but life, but maybe your personal life or other areas as well?
Yeah. So there's an old saying that you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with. And through no real fault of our own, because we can't choose our families or whatever, right? But you're going to grow up with a certain idea of how to handle money. That's just the way that it is, and there's nothing wrong with that because that's just the way that just life just sometimes will throw us at us. But at that point, one thing I realized, I started watching a lot of YouTube videos. I know you're in the real estate game, so I'm sure you know about Graham Stephan,
Mhm.
those guys, and Bigger Pockets podcast, and all these places. I started listening to people like that and seeing how they were doing things, and realized that okay, it's not that complicated. You just got to be smart about where you put your money, not just, for an example, leaving money in a savings account. You can leave money in a savings account; it does just fine there, but you're probably going to be losing out on inflation because the bank might be paying you 0.0001 in terms of interest, versus putting it in an index fund where you're going to be making on average, give or take, maybe around 7 to 10% a year. And leveraging low interest loans, which I mean, you got to be careful with this when it comes to leveraging debt. But that's one thing that you can do as well is leverage a low income. Like if you had a house, you have a low interest on that house. You might have a house that's getting 3%, 4%. And then you can, instead of paying off that house, the money that you would take to pay it off, you go invest somewhere else and make 10% on it. Or if you start a business, you could probably make 1,000% on it. And you're going to end up making more money there than you would with the opportunity cost of paying down the house. So you got to be careful with the balancing of that because you want to get out of debt as much as you possibly can. At least I do recommend that. But when you're first getting started, being able to use other people's money does really help in terms of being able to build. But those are the things I would have never known if I had sat there thinking to myself, oh, I already know it all. I already know what this. I like to be the dumbest person in the room sometimes when I'm around because I want to see what other people, what are they doing? And when I was able to surround myself with people who was making tens of thousands of dollars per month, hundreds of thousands of dollars per month. And some people are like, well, it's possible to make that kind of money. Yeah, when I go in there making my little bit, they look at me like, you need to get up with us, and it's only because I'm in a situation where I can talk with people like that. So you want to be able to surround yourself with people who are going to build you up, not necessarily tear you down.
You mentioned in the beginning of your point that we can't choose the families that we have for the most part. We can't choose the people in our immediate homes like that are close to us. And a lot of us come from places and communities where money's scarce. And once money's scarce, there's taboo and a lot of things that, that people say about money. It tends to cause us to grow up having limiting beliefs about money. And you also mentioned too at the end where you were saying that the people who look at your money as itty bitty money are like, hey, you come up with us. You need to get where we're at right now. And most people would think that it's, oh, they're up there and they would have left you stranded, left you for dead. Because a lot of people have that misconception that the rich are evil, rich are bad, the rich are just on the backs of others and blah, 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 blah. And so tell us a little bit let's talk more about, the average of your 5 people that you spend the most time with. How were you able to get out of your current circle to get into that next circle that elevated you to where you're at now?
Yeah, that's just a matter of networking and being involved in the space and where you are. Because most people are in what are called masterminds. So they're where other people, you kind of have a meeting of the minds there of what's going on in their business. So for example, for my YouTube channel, I'm in it's not even anything crazy, right? It's like a Facebook, what do you call it, a Facebook Messenger chat with about 10 or 12 other YouTubers. And they're talking about how they grow. They're trying this out. They'll put their thumbnail in the chat and say, hey, what do you guys think? Just to make sure that they are putting out the perfect situation so that they can help them grow. And while I'm involved in that, I'm also learning because some of these guys have much larger channels than I have, yet they're still asking me for my opinion. So it's real cool to be in situations like that. So I would say don't sell yourself short and think that you can't do things, but just go out there and find people who don't bring you down. And I said this earlier, but I know sometimes you might feel as though people closest to you are trying to bring you down. Sometimes they have your best interest at heart most times, right? They just don't want to see you struggle. But when you're first getting started, you're going to have to do a little bit of struggling. You might have to move back home with your parents and stay in their basement just to save a few bucks so that you can actually turn something into something. So if the people who are listeners to your show, if they're getting towards the end of college or thinking about going in there, this is the perfect time right now to take a risk and to do something. Maybe go invest in that multifamily house and then get a renter there, or buy a house with 4 bedrooms and rent out the bedrooms and then pay off that house as fast as possible and house hack. Those kinds of things are better to do now versus when you wait till you have a wife and kids and you got all types of people who are depend on you. You got to be very careful when you do that. So try to just network, even if it's a YouTube video or channel that you like, comment a lot on it. Get to the point to where these people know who you are because you do comment so often. You might open yourself up to an opportunity to be able to network with these guys. FinCon just happened. Going to FinCon can really help with just networking, getting other people who are in your space and then connecting with them. And then that's how you elevate who you hang out with.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about FinCon because I literally just found out about it probably like 2 weeks ago from the time of me us recording this.
Oh, nice.
And it was something that the lady who I interviewed for my first guest interview, she also has a real estate syndication business.
Yeah.
And so her partner in the business went to FinCon. So I seen it on their story.
Yeah.
I was like, what on earth is this? And why didn't I find out about this sooner? because I would have loved to attend it. So tell us a little bit about your FinCon. For anyone, I'm pretty much sure it stands for Finance Convention.
Convention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us
Yeah.
about your experience with FinCon and why that would be a good opportunity to network and to immerse yourself in.
Yeah, so FinCon is like, it's a convention of, usually there are a whole bunch of creators. So like creators on YouTube, creators in podcasting, blogging, but then also other people who are just in the space themselves and just practicing every day, doing whatever. And they all come together and they have markets, they have speakers who talk about their experience, what they're doing, what's new in the industry. There's usually like maybe 1,000 people there, and you have an opportunity to network. You're sitting across from people who are making tons of money, usually passively because they've set up processes in place to be able to make that kind of money. And it's not just FinCon. They have these conventions all the time. And it's not just like when you think about conventions, you think about like comic book conventions where you show up all dressed up like Captain America or something, right? We're not talking about that. They also have Vid Summit. They have a couple, I can't think there's another one that I've been to, but I can't think of it right now. But just being able to get in a position where you can go to places where there's other people who are interested in what you're doing. Chances are, as entrepreneurs, this is a very solo type game, especially if you're trying to do stuff online, or whatever. Like with me with the blogging, I sit down in front of a computer for a couple hours a day, and people might look at that and think, well, what are you doing in front of the computer all the time? Versus if I had another blogger across from me, they know exactly what I'm doing with that time. So just surround yourself with that, look for masterminds to be in. A lot of these masterminds require money to jump in as well. You know, I know one in particular costs $25,000 just to join. That's kind of something that you would do much later once your business is up and running. But I think I've paid as much as maybe $10,000, $12,000 a year just to be in the mastermind. But the amount of money that I make from the knowledge of those that I hang out with far exceeds what's being paid for that.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of people don't see that as valuable because they just see
The price
the
tag.
sticker price, the
Yeah.
sticker price, the price tag, and they fail to realize it's like you could learn through experience and your time, or you can learn with money and then have that shorten the time drastically and expedite your success just because you're surrounded with so many people that are knowledgeable and they're hungry, they're just as energetic, and they have a proven business model. You kind of mentioned throughout this show a bunch of times about systems and doing things passively. How are you able to create systems and start buying your time back? How important has that been in your life?
Yeah. So when I was working the corporate gig, one of the main things that I did was I was pretty good at taking pretty complicated concepts and then breaking them down simply to be explained to somebody. Maybe it was to one of these C-suite guys or whatever. Try to explain it to them so that they can understand why we're spending X amount of dollars. That's what my superpower was while I was there. I would create procedures and SOPs or standard operating procedures and things like that and put those in place for pretty much the whole company to follow. You got to be very strategic when it comes to putting together instructions because they have to be dummy proof, basically. So that was my superpower. So because that was my superpower, I've now taken that skill instead of using it to make somebody else rich, like you mentioned before, I started using it to make my own money. So I take these concepts, and just to use blogging as an example, since that's what I do, there's different stages to go from the idea to the blog post up and making money. So I just take that entire process and I break it down into 3 or 4 small parts and then try to insert people to do each one of those parts. It goes from coming up with the idea, coming up with someone who's going to write that article, getting the article back for editing, posting it, and then formatting and monetizing it. So that's like 5 different spots. So I have one person I normally do the research and trying to find what articles to write. And then after the research part of it, I send it off to my writers. The writers take care of it. They send it back to me, I then forward it to my editor. The editor takes a look at it. They post it up on the site. They format it to look nice for the internet. And then they post it. And then I come back later after the article's been up for a little bit to see if it's getting traffic. And if it's getting traffic, then I find ways to make money with it right then and there. So that whole process, that's a lot for one person, is now broken up and being taken care of by a team of about 7 people. So now all I have to do is come in at pretty much the very beginning and the very end and make sure that everything is still running. So coming up with those systems is basically just simplifying the process you're trying to create and then finding virtual assistants or finding other people who can do it for you. And then the money that you spend to pay them to do it, you then can spend that time being able to work on more higher value activities, right? So something as simple as cutting your yard. Now, when I was growing up in the South, you had to cut your yard like every 3 or 4 days because the grass just grows so fast all the time. I swear that sometimes I'd push the lawnmower and I look behind me and there's grass growing right there. But it was that much. So as I got older, I learned to just really, really hate cutting the yard. So when I finally got my own house and I had a yard, instead of doing it myself, I tried doing it. It would take me like 3 and 4 hours, like every time I needed to cut my own yard. I just started paying someone else to do it. And it cost like $50 to get him to do it, but he would do it in like 20 minutes and it would look better than when I did it. So I started realizing that, okay, I could pay him $50. Now I can go work on something for 3 or 4 hours. It's going to make me more than $50. So once I realized the value of my time and knowing that I could spend my time doing something more wholesome, maybe with the family or more helpful for the business, then it's all of a sudden it's worth $50. It's worth way more than $50. It's worth hundreds, maybe even thousands, depending on what I'm working on. So you need to value your time, break down your processes into very simple chunks, and then find someone else to do it.
Yeah, let's dive into this topic a little bit more because you often hear the saying, "Want something to get done right, do it yourself." And a lot of people, when they get into entrepreneurship, they wear all the hats and they don't want to let go of any of the hats because they want it done right. They don't want to give up control because someone else might mess up their business and do it wrong, and then that reflects back on them. But advice would you give to those people that kind of, I guess you could say control freaks or don't want to let go of any of the hats because they have to do it because they're the only one that can do it.
Yeah, usually entrepreneurs are like that. A lot of them are like that. I was like that. And I probably am still like that to a certain extent. But you're control freaks because you know that no one else can do it as best as you can. And the reality of it is that's true. No one's going to do it as best as you can because no one's going to care about it as much as you can. Nobody has as much stake in the game as you do when it comes to your business. But when I realized this one fact, that if I can get someone to do 80% of the job, that's good enough. If someone can do 80% of it, that's good enough for me because there's what's called a point of diminishing returns where I can work on it till it's 100% done, but that might take me so long to do. But if I can get it to about 80%, the amount of money that I would make on a project that's 80% done is probably pretty good. But then that extra 81 to 100% might take me so much longer than just getting it from the 0 to 80. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. But what I do is I try to get people who I know they're not going to do it as well as I am, but it doesn't matter, right? As long as they can do about 80% of what I can do, that's good enough for me. So I can now go concentrate on something else that's going to grow the business bigger.
Yeah, now that's a very interesting point. And one thing I was told is the similar thing in terms of I agree that everyone should leverage as much as they can.
Yeah.
But the reason that I believe that, we should leverage is because we're actually not the best at everything.
Yeah, that's true.
And there's people that do a lot of other things way better than we can. I'm sure you can probably build systems and procedures way better than I can, right? I'm sure that you can do a lot of those things way better than I can, blog better than I can, et cetera, et cetera. But it's like, there's some things that I may be able to do better than you. And let's say we're in a business together. If I were to try and do everything because I believe that I'm the best at everything, more often than not, we actually aren't. And there's actually someone who genuinely finds passion in the things you may not like doing or the things you may not have enough time to be doing. But back to you were saying, well, to use the same number, but for a different principle, the 80-20 principle.
Yeah.
That if you can focus on the 20% and just leverage out the other 80. So if in podcasting, it'll be me leveraging out all the social media posts and the editing and all that stuff, because my 20% of this would be getting behind the camera and talking to people like you and having these conversations and making sure that I can have the best possible conversation with the guest as possible.
Yeah.
So, but at the end of the day, I still believe we all should leverage, but regardless of whether we are or whether we aren't the best at everything, leveraging is super important. And what advice would you give to people that kind of are entering into this entrepreneurship world and don't really have their vision? They just know what they don't want to do. They know they may not want to work corporate. They know maybe they may not want to go to school. They know they may not want to work for someone else. What advice do you give for someone that is kind of starting this on a whim and trying to make something out of nothing, but doesn't really have that in terms of like that clear vision as to what the 5-10 years look like from now, or what's the end goal, or why am I even doing this aside from the fact that I'm just trying to go out there and do something?
Yeah, we're in a unique position in human history because of the internet. And because of the internet, things are much closer. The world's a lot of closer place. So because of where we live right now in this stream of time, we can take advantage of the fact that everything's an even playing field. I remember when COVID first started and no one could, a lot of these big TV personalities, they couldn't go to their studios anymore. They didn't have a live studio audience to talk to. So a lot of them had to go home and then start shooting YouTube videos, right? Or something to get in front of their people. And I remember like, I think Jimmy Kimmel did it. I remember Trevor Noah, a few of these people, right? When their first videos came out, right when the pandemic first started, they were terrible. They were boring because there was no laugh track in the background. I was just like, what's going on here? But at that time, I was a better YouTuber than they were, and we were all on the same playing field because of where we are. So I really think that blogging, the internet, podcasting, even YouTube, it's a leveling playing field now because even the little guy has the opportunity to do something. But nothing will happen if we just sit there waiting for something to happen to us. We need to take life by the horns, go out there and at least try. Find something that you like, something that you're good at, you don't mind doing, and just keep doing it until you make a lot of money doing it, and by doing that, it really is going to save you from working 30, 40 years and hopefully having retiring with enough money and health to be able to enjoy it. You might be able to fix that now with a few years of just buckling down and investing, buckling down and running a business or something like that. You might be able to retire when you're 30, depending on the situation that you're in, if you do it the right way.
Yeah. So what are some of the negative things that come with you making all this money and being able to find more time for yourself? I feel like a lot of people, they work super hard, they start leveraging and then find all this time in their hand and have nothing to do with it. And so they end up going right back to work and they end up in a position where they started from, even though they had the opportunity. So like, what were some of the difficulties that came with having all this time now? Like, what does someone even do with all the time?
Yeah, it is I looked at it as a good problem to have. So for example, like taxes is a big deal. And usually when you start making money with a business, and if you're really putting a lot of time and effort into it, that business can skyrocket pretty quickly. And if you don't have a good system in place to be able to make sure that you're paying your taxes well and saving some for taxes, paying them quarterly or annually or whatever you're doing, then, you're going to get a pretty big, return, or no, not a big return. You're going to get a pretty big
tax bill.
Tax bill. Yeah. Couldn't think of the word. You get a pretty big tax bill. So like one of the first things that I outsourced was going to buy with hiring a CPA to handle a lot of stuff for me. So you do got to be careful of those kind of things. And again, I remember thinking, man, that's a good problem to have. And until it started happening, and I was like, ugh, but it is what it is. But regardless, when you are having the extra time, I remember when I first quit my job, I didn't do anything for like 4 months. I was just like, I'm just going to enjoy my time not working. I was the kind of guy who always had a job since I was like 16 years old. So I was always doing something. And all of a sudden, I didn't need to do anything, and while I was working, I would work here, I work there, but I had a hard time managing my own time with making sure that I worked on it well. When you're working a job, you have a manager who tells you what to do, when to do, and how to do it. But when you're working for yourself, you have to be your own manager. And if you're not disciplined enough, then you're going to end up the money that you did make, you're going to just start sucking through it. And you're going to be back in the same position like you were mentioning before. So one of the things I had to learn was just how to plan, how to sit down and think about what I want to do today, this week, this month, this quarter, this year, and then have those goals to go after so that I had a direction when I sat down in front of the computer versus just trying to think of, okay, what do I feel like working on today? So it took a little bit of organization, but by doing that, now I had these measurables that I can look back at and say, okay, that's what I did last month. What can I do to improve upon that this month? Or maybe I set a goal and I didn't make it. But why didn't I reach that goal? Was it something external? Was it myself? I can give myself my own review in August. A lot of times when people are getting ready to get a raise or something, as giving myself my own reviews, then I was able to start moving the business further, faster.
You mentioned organizing your time. How important has time management been throughout your entire journey as an entrepreneur and now, especially now that you have more free time, which seems to lead to more temptation more often than not, because you end up doing stuff that you normally wouldn't do because you're just like, hey, why not? I have all this free time. So how important has time management been?
Man, it's still a struggle even today, John, because I will sit down in front of the computer and then you just get sucked into either social media, and I love YouTube, so I'm always on YouTube watching this and watching that. Next thing I know, I blink and it's like 2.5 hours later and I've done absolutely nothing. So that's always a constant struggle for me. And sometimes what I do is put the phone on do not disturb, put it face down, and just sit down and just try to work. But it's tough to do that when you have a family. My son will come up and he wants to play at that moment. But I'm like, even though I'm at home, I still need to take care of stuff, so, so I got to be careful with that because I don't want to like put them down too much because, well, daddy has to work. But it's one of those things to where you do have to balance even those extra aspects of it. So if you don't have a wife and kids yet, for sure, just take advantage of the time that you do have. A lot of people, they say that they didn't realize how busy they weren't until they had a family. Right? When you're single, you might think, man, I got this, I got that, yada yada yada. But then once you get to the point to where you do have a wife, kids, or family, you realize just how much time you don't have at that point. And you might be looking back and thinking, man, if I had that extra time when I was single, that would have been perfect. So take advantage of the time that you have now by sitting down and creating goals for yourself. Not everything needs to be tied to your job. Your job, you're just a number in most situations to that job. So make sure that you take care of yourself first. There's a new phrase I learned. It's called quietly quitting, where people are quitting their jobs without quitting their jobs physically. They're checking out mentally and only doing the bare minimum. And I got to that point a long time ago with my jobs, but it's because I would do extra stuff for them and I didn't feel like I was getting any of the return. And when I work hard on something myself for my business, I definitely see a return with it. So that's the whole rewarding part of it that I definitely enjoy. So it all comes down to just valuing and knowing your time and knowing how much you could make if you were able to work on yourself versus working on stuff for other people.
Yeah, definitely. No, I feel like that idea of quietly quitting is a very bad idea. But there's people like you who take that feeling and instead of just staying there for the rest of their life miserable, go out and make something happen for themselves, make something happen for their family.
Yeah.
A lot of people quietly quit and just stay there. And it's like, you're not doing anyone a benefit. You're not doing yourself a benefit. You're not doing the company a benefit. And it's like,
No.
they just stay there stuck and they point fingers and kind of, because yeah, with pointing fingers, then you're not accountable. You don't have to be accountable because it's not your fault. It's the company's fault or your manager's fault or X fault. And instead of taking back control of that accountability and saying, hey, I'm not getting appreciated. The work I'm doing is I'm going the extra mile, not being paid for. It's time for me to strap up and look for somewhere else. Or it's time for me to, hey, just call it quits and start something up of my own. And instead, people will like stay there and complain and just never do anything about it. So I wanted to talk about a little bit too for the people who are in a relationship and are starting their journeys. What advice would you give there? Because sometimes you may not be with a partner who's entrepreneurial. Not saying they have to be entrepreneurial, but they may have maybe some limiting beliefs, or maybe they might have sort of their own like ideas of money and scarce beliefs around that topic. How did you get around that if you had to deal with that? Or what advice would you give to people that may be dealing with that?
Yeah, so my wife isn't the most entrepreneurial person in the world. So when she learned that I was going to be trying to do this whole thing with the whole online business and everything, she was supportive of it, but she was still kind of skeptical because there is a little bit of a gap between getting started with this stuff and spending time building it up versus actually making your first couple bucks and making your first $100 or whatever. So there's a little bit of a gap there where you're kind of just on a computer, just hanging out. And sometimes people can look at you and think, well, what is it that you're doing? How come it's not working out? Why isn't it working faster? And that's just because of the mentality that we have in terms of working 2 weeks and immediately getting a paycheck. You have to build. It's like building a house, right?
Yeah.
Build it brick by brick. And then once the house is built, you can finally live in that house. And that's kind of how your business is. You kind of have to build it from the ground up. But once it's there, you just got to maintain it. You just got to fix a broken window here. You got to fix the piping here or whatever. It's just routine maintenance to keep it up on. When it got to the point to where the business started paying bills, then my wife started perking up. Oh, wait a second. Okay, this is actually legit. And when it got to the point to where the amount of money that I was making was outpacing the amount of money that I was making at work, then that's when, okay, she's like, all right, what I got to do to help you out here? So we started focusing more on that. And it actually became an option for me to go to work. So it got to the point to where if they crossed me the wrong way at my old job, I was like, well, you know what? I don't have to be here. And that's
Yeah.
I got into that point. So I guess to get to your original point, even if you're a significant other or if you're in a relationship and they're not the most entrepreneurial, just instead of trying to sell them on the idea of what you're working on right then and there, sell them on the idea of what this can become later down the line if you continue working on it. And it might take, you want to be sure not to allow it to take time away from you hanging out with them. So don't just say, okay, I can't do that tonight. I got to work on the website or I got to work on this, whatever. But keep those kind of things in mind because then they're just going to see it as something that's keeping you away from them, you know? So
Yeah.
that's not what you want. So I might do things like, especially when I was still working, I would wake up an hour early and work on it. I might stay up an hour later and work on it after I've already done everything around the house that needed to be done. Now I got my time. I remember I stopped watching and binge watching Netflix shows just so I could have an extra little bit of time to be able to work on the site. Now I can binge on as many shows as I want, but at the time I had to give it up. So I'm not saying that you got to give it up completely forever, but you can just give it up for a little while, get a few of those hours back, and then use that time for something that's going to continue replacing things that you're hoping that it replaces in the future.
Yeah. Chris, you dropped a bunch of gems this entire episode. Where can people go to find more about you? Where could they get in touch with you? Could they connect with you?
Yeah, so definitely it's been a blast, by the way, John. So thanks so much for having me on. But the podcast, Blogger Revolution, search that, subscribe. Also on YouTube, same name. You can also catch me on Instagram at Chris Myles Official. But other than that, go listen over there if you want to learn how to build a passive income with blogging and affiliate marketing. Blogger Revolution podcast.
And that's amazing. Make sure, guys, that you realize that he's not the lazy stoners. He's actually going to give you some good games. Nothing against him. I've never watched his videos, but it sounds like he led you down the wrong path. But it's time for my favorite segment of this interview, the final 4 questions that I do with every single guest. Question number 1: what is the most impactful lesson you learned in life?
Oh, the most impactful lesson was when I gave a ton of money to the wrong guy to teach me something. And it was because I didn't vet him good enough or well enough. And I had to learn. It's one of those, when I was growing up, my dad used to always tell me this little saying, if I had a friend that wanted $20, I'd give him the $20. And if he said he's going to pay me back next week, great. When next week comes, I'm not going to ask him for it. But if he doesn't give it to me, 2 weeks down the line, a month down the line, a year down the line, he asks me for another $20. I'll be like, nah, you never paid me the other $20, right? But I paid a $20 lesson to learn that thing, right? That particular lesson. So it's the same thing when I paid this guy. I realized the things that I messed up on, the things that I didn't vet when I should have, paid a few $1,000s to him, didn't get back in return what I really was expecting. And it could have turned me off from never doing it again, but I learned my lesson is kind of what I did. And what's called failing forward, right? I failed, but I failed forward and I learned something from it. And that didn't stop me from investing with another mentor about a year later, you know? And from there, I was able to really blow up the business because I learned Instagram ads. And that was really a very pivotal moment is fail forward, but do so to where you always are learning a lesson, even if you got to pay for it.
What is the most admirable trait a person can have?
Oh, I would definitely say humility and in making sure that you don't always need to know everything. Sometimes I come across as a know-it-all. I don't know why. I try not to. But like I mentioned earlier, I try to be the dumbest person in the room. And by doing that, I'm always asking questions, being a little more inquisitive because I don't want my thinking to be like, oh, I already know that. I already know that I don't need to listen to you. You might know an aspect of it that I never even thought of. And that might be able to add 10% to my bottom line at the end of the month or something, you know? So always don't think that you know everything. Sit back and listen. And from that point, you might be able to really increase your income and wealth.
If you wanted to change someone's life with one book, what would you recommend?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would definitely say Expert Secrets was pretty good by Russell Brunson. Excuse me. That book right there really helped with imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is like when you might be teaching somebody something, but then you might not feel that you're qualified to talk about it. But he has this really interesting story in there about a guy named Frank Abagnale, which was the Catch Me If You Can guy. It was his story was based on that. And one of the things he was doing, he was like masquerading as a doctor. He masqueraded as a professor and a doctor and a few things. So one of the things when the feds finally caught up with them, they asked them, they were like, okay, we understood how you did this and you pretended to be an airplane pilot. You pretended to do this and do that. How did you teach a philosophy class for an entire semester? And I don't even think he finished high school or anything. So how did you do that? And he said, well, I didn't know too much about philosophy, but I had the book. So I just read one chapter ahead than everybody else. At that point, I always knew a little bit more than what they knew. So I say all of that to say this: expert secrets help me understand that you don't have to be an expert in your field. You don't have to be on a scale of 1 to 10, a 10. You just got to be a 6 where you can turn around and you can help the 1, 2s, 3s, and 4s.
That's pretty good advice. And what is the legacy that you're trying to leave behind?
So legacy would probably be time with the family, because I've seen what different types of upbringings can do for children. And there's no guarantee. You can still have the perfect family life and still grow up to be a serial murderer, but it just depends on what situation that you came in. And I wanted to try to give my son the best opportunity to be able to thrive. And I didn't want to be a stranger in my own household. So to him, I hope one day he realizes that a lot of what I have been doing, a big reason why I'm talking to you is because of what he was able to do when he changed my life by just showing up, So hopefully that could be the legacy that I'll leave, is that he can now do that with whatever family he has in the future.
That's amazing, Chris. Well, I definitely got a lot of takeaways myself. I know the audience will definitely have a bunch of takeaways to get from.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for agreeing to have me on. This has been exciting.
Thank you guys for tuning in to today's episode. Again, I am your host, John Mendez. You can find me at JohnMendez_realtor and at Walk to Wealth on Instagram. Please make sure to subscribe and leave a review if you're loving the podcast so far. New episodes are released every Sunday. Look forward to seeing you guys in the next episode. Take care.